Hey YouTubers, X Factor here with some Karkand Rush gameplay, and one of the guys in the tank is hoping and praying that I'm not a noob gunner. At least he's got his priorities straight, right? Because my gunning skills probably dictate whether he lives or dies due to the tanks being flanked and just dropped by C4 left and right on this map because there's so many nice little hiding spots. And I'm going to rock out the G36, which is a highly situational weapon. More importantly, we're going to talk about the release of the Titan GPU benchmarks over at Tom's Hardware. These guys have already benchmarked this card and various other cards in the category in Battlefield 3 and Crisis, which is probably the most hardware-intensive game out on the market. That thing can take a beast of a computer, chew it up, spit it out, and still only give you 50 to 60 frames on various settings. But it's important to know what system did the boys over at Tom's Hardware used. Unfortunately, it is a monster. A Intel i7-3970X. That is a badass CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and of course a high-end Intel X79 chipset MOBO. A lot of money right there, right? Probably not your average rig. So there's probably going to be no bottlenecks or less compared to some of the rigs out there, so keep that in mind. The first test that we're going to look at is actually when they ran it in a single monitor high-def setup on Battlefield 3. And they're running the ultra quality preset in single player mode. Keep that in mind, 1920 by 1080. So there may be some losses in multiplayer. And look at the averages. No surprises here. The 690, currently 2 GPUs on 1 chipset. So that's built-in SLI. The Titan, the question was, how close would it get to the 690? Would it get within 10%? They're 30 plus frames off. That's a long way. Then you can see the 680 and the 7970 basically neck and neck. So the question becomes, if you're running a single monitor, if you're just playing Battlefield 3, where's the bang for the buck? Obviously, the Titan is probably a little short of pushing a 120 monitor by itself at that setting. It needs a little help, right? Because if you get that low end, you don't want that low dip. That's going to hurt you a little bit. But of course, a 690, all is well at those crazy ultra settings. Now, if you lower some of the settings in Battlefield 3 that are frames intense, it looks like you'll be able to pull 120 or close to 120 on average with a single card, a single chipset. That's pretty nice due to the simple fact that this card is extremely quiet and it's pretty efficient with the power. Nice little combination. So far this round is kind of a grind. We still got one bomb to go, and I'm about to show you kind of the sweet spot of this G36. Close to medium range. Once you get outside that medium range, the bullet deviation recoil is just disgusting on this gun. This is not a gun that you want to roll with on wide open maps. This is a gun where the engagements are within 40-ish meters. And again, the stock hip fire in this thing is just nasty. It's one of the best in the game, but it's not the best up close. Like, there's other guns better than this, like the A91. Look at that hip fire. That's pretty gross for this sight of gun. The A91 is much better just due to its pure hip fire machine and rate of fire to back that up. So what happens in Battlefield 3 when we crank up the resolution? As you can see, the 690 is king again, averaging out 85 frames. Not bad for that high of a resolution. The Titan's behind at 66. And of course, if you're just on a 60 hertz monitor, that's plenty to play with. Of a low of 54, that is not too bad on the minimum, right? And keep in mind that this 7970 is kind of ahead of the 680 here. So where's your value there? On that resolution, 7970 is not looking too bad when you think about the price tag that comes with that. Because we're talking about some of the fastest, best cards in the market, why not crank up the resolution one more time? And look what these guys go to, 5760 by 1200 in triple and quad SLIs. And here's my problem. I have dual SLI 690s, and look at that minimum. That's hiccuping. I'm getting that in my current cards right now, and I'm waiting for a patch or a fix because that's unplayable, right? Even if you're running lower resolutions, such as one monitor, I'm still having issues. As you see, I'm about to give my own teammates issues by burying them in about 100 tons of rubble. Oops, I saw we. Going back to this, we can see the GTX Titans in triple SLI pushing out 91 frames on that single player test at these resolutions. That's $3,000. The question is, when you drop some of the settings, will you gain 20 to 40 frames? Yes, probably. But is it worth that money? If you're already running those screens and those resolutions, you probably have a couple extra grand. And as you can see, this performs outperforms the 690s without the hiccuping, which is a nice thing. It doesn't matter if you're pushing 200 frames. The second you go down to 20, you're probably dead. That's not helping you. You want smooth, fluid gameplay. And I'm about to drop some rubble on some people. There's 2 spots you can knock out over here, and they're both the front corners. So let's get lucky here. There we go. A little rubble drop on probably a prone bush Wookiee. Serves them right. So after looking at all these results within Battlefield 3, would I buy a Titan? Yes, you bet your sweet ass I would. If it was priced according to the market. The market bears value. You've got a 690 that can outperform this card on most setups, already at $1,000. You've got a 680 that's performing slightly underneath this card for $450 to $550 USD, right? So what dollar point would I buy the Titan at? Looking at those two, knowing the 690 outperform it's at a G note, and looking at the 680, which is a very nice card for about half the value, I would gladly pay anywhere between $6 and $675 for the Titan. It would have a place in my home, potentially, possibly, in an SLI array, seeing as it doesn't have the hiccuping issues. But at the settings that I run at, I could probably get away with one because I don't run Ultra. I run Ultra on mesh, and I run highs, mediums, and lows on pretty much everything else. So that saves me a lot of frames, right? And that's what I'm about, maintaining 120 frames at all costs. You guys saw a video the other day when I was flying around with Dishy on an empty Caspian border. My computer didn't even bat an eye at dropping beneath 120, which I locked my frames at. That was my 670 setup. I believe the 670 has better value than running a single Titan at this very moment. Hopefully this is just a gimmick with NVIDIA. They try to flush out a bunch of cards because their people are going to pay this value for this card. And it makes sense for certain people. Do you want to run a very small case with a monster CPU and a monster GPU? This card is definitely for you because the 690 is a beast of a card size-wise, and the 680 isn't much smaller. They're both very big. So this does make sense for A, people with money, and B, people with size constraints, or want something that can just up and travel with them if they're going to college or they're going back and forth with a lot of lands or traveling. It really does make sense. But for me, the dollar mark has to come down, and I think the rest of the community will see it for that. It's just too damn high right now. Will it drag the other cards down in price? Probably not. Because, again, the other cards are in their own little world, right? The only thing that's going to drag the 600 series cards out are probably the 700 series cards. There'll be a quick drop in price, and then once that market dries up, it'll be hard-pressed to find the 600 series cards. That's the way NVIDIA kind of rolls. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Take a look at the Tom's Hardware review and look at how Crysis chews up this stuff and spits it out and pretty much says, hey, I need better hardware, dude. You better bring it. As always, thanks for joining me, YouTube, and we'll see you soon.